Hello, hello, welcome in. We'll give everybody just a moment to jump into the webinar and get settled. Got a few more. All right. Quite a few individuals today. Good afternoon. Yes. Wonderful to see. Hello, hello. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. Yes, absolutely. We still have quite a few individuals jumping in here. Just want to make sure we get everybody in. This session is going to be recorded. Great question. Yes, the recording will be available within the course within the next 1 to 2 days. Hoping I can get in there and get it in today. Perfect. All right, we still have some individuals coming in here. Good evening, good morning. All right. Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are, and welcome to today's CCRPS webinar. We're going to be talking specifically about launching your career as a clinical research associate. So I do want to let you know there's going to be a lot of information in this webinar today, but this is kind of just to jumpstart the career services aspect of clinical research associates, or the CRA. So over the next few months, we'll be focusing each webinar more on individual aspects. We just kind of wanted to do, excuse me, allergies, a big picture view today. And then, like I mentioned before, we'll go in and do deeper dives into individual kind of topics and action items in your job search moving forward. So again, thank you all for coming. My name is Jessica Angelescu. I am the Internship and Partnership Procurement Manager. I don't know why I did that. One moment. All right, there we go. All right. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the CRA, the Complete Career Internship and Placement Guide. All right. So, first off, we want to start with what is a CRA? And why does it matter? What do they do? So, a clinical research associate, or CRA, is in the sponsor's eyes and ears of clinical trial sites. So you're going to be making sure that the trial follows protocol, meets the ICH GCP standards, as well as satisfying regulatory requirements. This position does require great attention to detail and a solid understanding of kind of those risks, what can go wrong. So, you're not an auditor, you're not an admin, you don't work for the site. Each role does have different responsibilities, oversight requirements, as well as different documentation standards. So it really does depend on, the type of position and the employer that you're working for. So when we're looking at on a day-to-day basis what CRAs actually do, they keep patients safe by monitoring adverse events, protocol compliance, verifying source documents, ensuring to catch any type of data errors before they become issues or roadblocks, documenting everything in a way that protects the sponsor, spot risks early on, mitigate those risks through monitoring data and site visits, and then writing reports that can withstand FDA inspection. And these aspects really matter because it directly impacts inspection outcomes, regulatory findings, sponsor confidence, contract renewals, site performance, and investigator relationships, as well as trial timelines, milestones, when those are achieved, are they on time, as well as budget overruns and cost containment. So one thing I have noted down here that this is why sponsors are careful about who they hire as a CRA. A bad monitor can lead to regulatory citations, compromised data, or worse. Every hiring decision from an employer's perspective is risk-based. So let's look at how hiring decisions are actually made. So we all know that there are tons of different kind of healthcare positions out there. Each hiring process is different. So this is kind of why we wanted to spotlight kind of the course of hiring and what employers are looking for. So up here we have noted hiring managers don't ask, does this person know GCP? That's baseline, and everyone who has a certification knows the GCP. But what they're really looking for and assessing when they're going through their hiring process is whether you can handle the judgment calls that come with independent monitoring. So looking at risk assessment capability, you will need to look at a site and spot the difference between paperwork issues and a regulatory problem. So you want to ask yourself, can I identify patterns in data that signal risk? You want to make sure that you are communicating in an excellent way. Sites don't like being told they're doing something wrong. Sponsors don't like surprises. So you do need to be able to communicate clearly without creating friction on one end or panic on the other. Next up, we have independent management. So most CRAs work remotely and manage about 8 to 12 sites. You won't have someone looking over your shoulder. So when we're looking at this, you want to be able to ask yourself, can I make sound decisions and maintain professional boundaries without constant supervision? So are you someone who needs to be constantly reminded to be, doing your work and kind of double checking things? So we'll move on to inspection ready documentation. So you are monitoring reports that are legal documents. They have to be clear, objective, and defensible. If the FDA shows up, your documentation needs to hold up, be precise. Again, back to the attention to detail. And then strategic escalation. Knowing when to escalate protocol deviation and when to handle it at a site level is definitely a skill that employers are looking for. You have to be sure that you're protecting patient safety and sponsor interests without damaging relationships or crying wolf. CRAs are higher based on judgment, not enthusiasm. And this is why structured training programs do exist. Judgment can't be taught in just a weekend. It needs to be developed and tested, validated before anyone lets you monitor independently. So being enthusiastic in clinical research is necessary, but it's not enough to get you hired into a CRA role. All right, so let's talk about who realistically becomes a CRA. So entry into clinical monitoring follows predictable pathways. So understanding these routes help you, the candidate, position yourself strategically and develop the specific competencies that the hiring managers are seeking. So when we look at this, we start with a clinical trial assistant or in-house CRA. These individuals gain direct exposure into managing workflows, TMF management, and site communication. These roles really do provide structured pathways into monitoring positions in the field. And then we go to experienced CRCs. So clinical research coordinators within 2 to 3 years of site-based experience, ensuring that you're bringing in practical knowledge of regulatory documentation, consent processes, and protocol execution that translates directly into monitoring. Then we move into research nurses with regulatory exposure. So nurses with clinical trial experience, particularly those involved in safety, reporting, protocol, compliance, possessing clinical skills, assessment skills for monitoring responsibilities. Then we look at regulatory or QA professionals. QA specialists and regulatory affair professionals move into monitoring, bring inspection readiness, documentation discipline, and compliance framework that align with the CRA expectations. And then life science graduates in trainee programs. So recent graduates with life science degrees entering the CRA training program receive formal monitor training and supervised field experience before going on independent assignments. But when we're looking at this, you want to make sure that what matters the most is the monitoring readiness that you have, not necessarily the title. Each company is different. They have different titles for basically the same position. So don't necessarily focus on, when you're going out and doing your job search on a specific titles. Again, employers really want to see that candidates can articulate monitoring workflows, risk-based thinking, documentation. All those expectations are consistently met and preferred over those with generic clinical research backgrounds. All right, so let's look at the core responsibilities for the CRA and what you must know. So the CRA executes comprehensive oversight across the clinical trial life cycle. So when we're looking at responsibilities, you have the site qualification and initiation. So site feasibility assessments, qualification, visit execution, SIVs, staffing, training and delegation, regulatory document verification. When we're looking at safety and data oversight, AE and SAE oversight for monitoring perspectives, query lifecycle management, data reconciliation, safety signal identification, and escalation to medical monitors. Over here, we have ongoing monitoring activities. So interim monitoring visits, whether on-site or remote, RBM execution, source data verification, source data review, protocol deviation identification, compliance and documentation, monitoring, report prep, TMF completeness and quality, inspection readiness activities, audit support response, and CAPA tracking and verification. So these are the things that you, when you're out job searching, that you would want to be looking for in the job description. So if an employer posts a job position opening or opportunity, these are definitely kind of those keywords that you want to look at. And have along your various profiles, resumes, and we'll get more into that in a little bit. But these are kind of those keywords that you want to focus on. So when we're looking at performance evaluation, CRAs are evaluated on quality of oversight, not number of visits. Quantity metrics matter less than the depth of risk assessment and clarity in documentation. All right, so RBM, risk-based monitoring. This is how modern clinical trials actually work. So instead of verifying 100% of source data, the RBM focuses monitoring resources on what's really critical. So patient safety and data that affects trial outcomes. So we're looking at critical data identification. So what data are we looking at and why it actually matters? So primary endpoints, safety labs, eligibility criteria. Trigger-based escalation. So setting up triggers that tell you when a site needs more oversight. You don't want to wait for the quarterly visit to discover a roadblock or a problem or a challenge. Process prioritization. So focusing on processes that can go wrong in ways that matter. So looking at informed consent, patient eligibility, drug accountability. You want to focus more on that and kind of leave the admin stuff for later. And then centralized monitoring. So using data analytics to spot problems before you get on the plane. Statistical trends and anomalies tell you what site needs attention. So when we're looking at this from an interview perspective, you know, I'm sure a lot of you have the question of how do I talk about this in an interview? So an example would be I use RBM principles to focus on safety critical data and protocol endpoints. I rely on centralized monitoring to identify site risk patterns, then target my on-site reviews based on what the data is telling me. And this is really the language that the hiring managers, recruiters want to hear. It really does show that you have an understanding that the monitoring is strategic, not mechanical. You're not just, going through a checklist. You're really looking at the data, the story that it tells, and you're using it to make decisions about, where you need to spend your most time. So some of the critical data points are primary and key secondary endpoints, safety lab values, inclusion, exclusion criteria, informed consent dates and versions, and IP admin and accountability. Some of the non-critical data points is the medical history details unrelated to eligibility, medications with no safety interaction, demographic data, admin CRF fields, and non-protocol required assessments. All right, so SDV versus SDR and the difference that matters. So the SDV is transcription checking. So basically what you're doing is verifying that what's in the database matches with what's in the source documents. It's definitely necessary. So activities that are included in the SDV are comparing CRF entries to source documents, verifying dates, values, selections, catching transcription errors, and then document what you've checked. So With that, junior CRAs can do SDV because it doesn't require much judgment. You're just really looking and matching data. So when we look at the source data review, the SDR, this is where the real monitoring happens. You're evaluating whether the source documentation makes sense clinically and procedurally. So some of the activities for the SDR include, does the clinical data make sense? Is documentation complete and timely? Are there protocol deviations hiding in the records? Do you see any patterns that suggest bigger problems? Is the investigator actually overseeing the trial? So SDR is what experienced CRAs do, and you need to know what you're looking at and knowing what matters. Some of the things that we put here, just to note, so systematic issue detection. So senior CRAs catch systematic problems early, reoccurring eligibility, violations, consent process, failures, inadequate PI oversight. That's the SDR in action. When we're looking at reduced inspection findings, a good SDR reduces inspection findings. You can find and fix documentation gaps and protocol issues before the FDA shows up. And then earn sponsor trust. So CRAs who understand that this distinction earns trust faster. It shows that you're able to think about risk, not just about checking off those boxes, as we mentioned before. All right, monitoring visits, execution expectations. So how you execute monitoring visit determines whether you're a good CRA or just an adequate one. So every phase matters. So we're looking at prep, on-site, and then follow-up. So when we're looking at the preparation, you want to do this first. Review protocol amendments since your last visit, look at query patterns, deviations, check centralized monitoring data for site-specific risk, build a targeted review plan. Definitely want to make sure that you're not just showing up and winging it. Confirm logistics and set expectations within the site. Be sure to review your last report. What CAPA items need verification. So good CRAs spend as much time prepping as they do on site. If you're rushing your prep, you'll miss things and waste a lot of time. So once you're on site, you want to stay focused. So prioritizing safety data, eligibility, and conformed consent, checking consent workflows, version controls, reviewing training records, delegation logs, and watch how they actually handle the IP and maintain logs. You want to do your targeted SDV based on risk. Talk to staff on site and really ensure that they understand protocol. Definitely document as you go and stay objective. And then lastly, we're looking at follow-up. So basically closing the loop. You want to write your report within the sponsor's timeline, typically 5 to 10 days. Be clear, objective, link findings to actual risks, call or email critical issues immediately, don't wait. Track the CAPA items to closure, update the risk assessment for each site based on what you found, and then keep everyone informed. Your report quality determines whether your monitoring is defensible in an inspection. So you want to ensure that you're not being vague or not noting any type of risk. All right, so monitoring reports, career defining skill. So monitoring reports are legal records of sponsor oversight. These documents must withstand regulatory inspection, support sponsor defense and litigation, and serve as a primary evidence that adequate monitoring occurred. So report quality directly correlates with career advancement. So when we're looking at high quality reports versus poor reports, on the high quality end, your reports are factual and objective. So reports document observations with emotional language, speculation, or subjective interpretation. They state what is observed, when, and by who. Risk-linked observations. Each finding clearly connects to specific risk categories. So we're looking at patient safety, data integrity, regulatory compliance, or protocol adherence. Up next, we have inspection-ready language. So language that anticipates regulatory review. Your reports avoid abbreviations, jargon, and ambiguous statements that could be misinterpreted by someone else. You want to make sure that you have clear corrective actions. So reports that show purpose, specific corrective actions with defined timelines and responsible parties rather than vague recommendations. I'm going to admit a few other individuals. And then appropriate escalation. So reports show critical findings immediately while documenting minor observations proportionally without creating unnecessary alarm. So those are all the high quality reports. So let's take a moment to talk about the poor reports. So vague descriptions. This is very, very important. So statements like issues were noted or concerns exist really fail to document specific observations and provide no actionable information. You want to avoid using terms like disappointed, frustrated, unacceptable, because this can undermine professional credibility. We also have delayed submission. So reports submitted weeks after visits do reduce sponsor ability to implement timely corrective actions and suggest monitoring inefficiency. And then let's look at formatting. So reports that lack standardized structure, risk categorization, or consistent terminology create confusion and reduce regulatory defensibility. And then lastly, missing context. So if you're documenting and you're failing to reference previous findings, open the CAPA items, or risk trends to prevent risk assessment. So typically when we're looking at standard monitoring report turnaround, it's about 5 to 10 days, business days. Reports, poor reports stall promotions. So excellence reports accelerate advancement. So you want to make sure that, you don't lag on your reports and you submit them precisely, quickly, again, with the attention to detail. And every monitoring report must be written assuming regulatory review. So you need to have 100% inspection readiness. And then in regards to typical retention period for monitoring reports as essential trial documentation, it's about 3 to 5 years with that one. All right, so let's get into the CRA career progression. So clinical monitoring careers follow predictable progression patterns. So being able to understand these pathways helps and assists the CRAs to set realistic expectations, identify skill gaps, and strategically position yourself for advancement. All right, so the first level is a CRA 1. This is the entry level. The responsibilities include supervised monitoring visits, basic SDV, query resolution, support, and TMF maintenance. Travel with this position is about 50 to 75%, and This role focuses on learning, monitoring fundamentals, and building site relationships. Next up is the CRA 2, which is the mid-level. And this is where independent monitoring with minimal supervision, SDR execution, deviation assessment, and increased site portfolio happens. A little bit more travel, looking at 60 to 80% with a focus of RBM principles and inspection readiness. Then we move up to the senior CRA, so looking at complex protocol oversight, new CRA mentorship, site escalation management, and quality improvement initiatives. Travel goes down a little bit on the average with about 50 to 70%, focusing on strategic risk assessment and team development. All right, then we go on to the lead CRA or principal CRA, kind of, again, depending on the employer, the sponsor, things of that nature. So this is a multi-study oversight with CRA team leadership, vendor management, sponsor relationship management. Travel goes down quite significantly with the lead and principal positions. Travel typically is about 30 to 50% with focus on operational excellence and organizational leadership. Then we move on to the clinical trial manager or the CTM. So this level of position is study level management, cross-functional leadership, budget oversight, strategic planning. Travel typically around 20 to 40%. So starting to go down more, focusing on trial execution and stakeholder management. And then Director of Clinical Operations. So this is really that portfolio management, departmental leadership, resource allocation, organizational strategy, focusing on operational strategy, business development, with travel around 10 to 20%. So when we're looking at alternative career paths, there's a few different kind of paths we could focus on. So looking at quality assurance, transition to internal auditing, inspection readiness, quality systems, regulatory affairs. So this is more submission management, health authority, communication, and compliance. Looking at vendor management, overseeing the CRO relationships, contract and negotiation, as well as performance metrics. And then sponsor oversight. So joining sponsor organizations in clinical operations or site management roles. So when we look at this career progression, timelines do vary by organization, employers, the therapeutic area complexity, individual performance. When we're looking at a CRA 1 to a CRA 2, it's about 2 to 3 years. And then that next step from CRA 2 to senior CRA is about 3 to 4 years, with then about 2 to 3 years from senior CRA to the lead or the principal CRA roles. But early learning and monitoring fundamentals really do determine the speed of progression through your career path. So those CRAs who develop strong documentation skills, demonstrate independent judgment, and build sponsor trust advance significantly faster than those that remain operationally focused. All right, so when we're looking at CRA and compensation overview, I'm sure all of you have questions about this. So the CRA compensation reflects the specialized nature of monitoring responsibilities, regulatory accountability, and travel demands. So you really want to be able to understand, the structures for, your salary or wages, because it really will help you negotiate effectively and set realistic career expectations. So when we're looking at the therapeutic area, oncology, rare diseases, and gene therapy trials typically command about 10 to 20% premium over general medicine due to protocol complexity and safety monitoring intensity. So when we're looking at protocol complexity, phase one, first in human studies, adaptive designs, high-risk interventions that require advanced monitoring skills and offer higher compensation. As we talked a little bit about before in the previous slide, travel requirements, CRAs with 75% plus travel expectations do typically receive higher base salaries plus comprehensive per diem travel reimbursement packages. When we're looking at employer type, top tier CROs, like large biopharma sponsors, specialized SMOs offer competitive compensation with comprehensive benefits and advancement opportunities. So looking at the typical US compensation ranges, this is from 2024. We've got the CRA with minimum of 70, maximum 90 a year. This is a level 1. A level 2 is about 90 to 115 a year, and then the senior CRA is 115 to about 145. So when you're looking at jobs, definitely make sure you do your research. You can look on Glassdoor, Indeed, some other websites as well that have employees or previous employees that notes, the position type, how much they're earning, what the benefits are, travel reimbursement packages, things of that nature. So definitely make sure that you're doing the research behind. All right, so let's get into the resume template. So if you're an entry level or you're looking to transition, this is a really good template to use for your resume. So at the top, you want to have your professional summary. You want to kind of show and tell the story of who you are, what you've done, looking at your strengths, looking at the keywords from the job description, what the employer is looking for. Some of the words that pop out to me in this professional summary is the clinical research associate, risk-based monitoring, source data verification, source data review, protocol, inspection ready monitoring documentation, regulatory compliance oversight. So, this will all come from the job description. But again, you definitely want to be looking at each job description and making sure that the resume that you're submitting does have those keywords. Looking further into the professional summary, focus on patient safety, data integrity, sponsor defensible oversight with demonstrated ability to identify site risk patterns, escalate appropriately, seeking CRA1 or CRA trainee position with structured mentorship and opportunities for professional development. So again, this is just your high-level overview of who you are, what your strengths, what your skills are, kind of, and what you're looking for. So we're looking at core competencies. So this is the next section on your resume. So again, those keywords from the job description, clinical monitoring and oversight, site oversight, RBM principles, SDV, SDR, ICH GCP and 21 CFR Part 11 knowledge, TMF management, electronic data capture, CTMS systems. So these are all the things that you're learning through your program, through your certification course, that you want to ensure that the employer sees. So you get about 6 to 10 seconds resume review from a recruiter. they're going to look and say, okay, this person has what I'm looking for, or they don't have what we're looking for. So it's really important to make sure that this core competencies skills section really does stand out with those keywords. So then moving on to kind of that work experience, um, your next section is the experience or relevant projects that you've worked on. So when we're writing this out, you want to make sure that you have the title of the position, the company name, also dates, if applicable. So if you were doing the training program from January of 2025 to June of 2025, or if it's a program that you did, um, you know, hours instead of kind of date range, that's completely fine as well. But then again, once you you get the title, the name of the company, and the dates in there, you want to write out your responsibilities. Again, using those keywords. Also, don't forget about transferable skills. So if this is, your first time being in a position as a CRA, but you've had previous positions, you want to make sure that you are using keywords to kind of show that you have had some type of experience. The recommendation that I use, that I have used in the past is, kind of do a Google search or a chat GPT, say you can insert your or upload your resume and say, what are some transferable skills? How can I highlight those on my resume? And then moving on to the education and certifications. So the title, well, not the title, but the program that you completed. So whether it's the Advanced Clinical Research Associate certification, or it's a university degree, you want to be sure to put that first and then the university or training organization name afterwards. And then also if your certification is current or the year that you obtained it. Some additional things that you can add to your resume would be technology. So kind of naming out the different systems that you've used in any previous positions or that you used throughout training or the certification program. So when we're looking at resume principles, again, use monitoring specific keywords for ATS optimization. You really want to quantify your accomplishments when possible. So any type of data that you can input. So the number of sites that you're currently managing would be a great one. Emphasizing regulatory thinking over task completion. You want to make sure you're keeping the formatting clean and ATS compatible. So really, you want to ensure that the format of the page is clean. Typically use 8.5 by 11, I think is the standard format. And then making sure that you're bolding these headings. So professional summary, core competencies, your experience, education certifications. Again, if you use the technology piece down here, highlight those as well. Some employers really like when you highlight relevant keywords from the job description, makes it easier. Using bullet points for competencies, skills, as well as job responsibilities, project responsibilities. And then you also So once you create it, you want to save it as a PDF as well and use the PDF to submit when you're applying for the job. All right, so taking a look at the cover letter templates. So previously we talked about the professional summary that says a high level of who you are, what your training and education is, and then kind of what you're looking for. But this is a more in-depth kind of story of those things. You always want to approach with dear hiring manager, dear hiring professional. I'm applying for insert company title, as well as the name. You want to highlight kind of any projects or training or internships, kind of those experiences and what you did, what type of role you're seeking, why. And then thank them for, considering your application, your name, your contact information. So cover letter best practices. So again, customize company name, specific role title, reference specific monitoring competencies from the job description, keywords, using regulatory language, keeping the length to 3 to 4 paragraphs maximum. You don't need to definitely don't go over 1 page. Just make it very brief to the point. Again, you don't have a lot of time in the recruiter's hands, so you want to be sure that you're keeping the attention of the hiring professional. And then you also want to proofread for grammar and formatting. What to avoid looking at cover letters. So generic enthusiasm statements, overstating monitoring authority or experience, focusing on personal interest rather than monitoring readiness, lengthy paragraphs that obscure key qualifications, and then salary expectations or travel limitation discussions. Definitely want to save this piece for the pre-screen or the interview with the recruiter or the hiring manager. All right, so in a world of technology today, LinkedIn has become, especially since COVID, one of those places that a lot of individuals go to. So you want to make sure that, your LinkedIn profile is up to date, that it matches your resume. So any type of platform that you have. So you have your resume and then you have the job platform. So LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster, whatever job posting platform you're using, you want to make sure that everything matches across all of the platforms and that it's consistent. Employers do look for that. So your headline. So when you create or update, you have your profile picture, make sure you have that. And then kind of who are you? What are you looking for? So very short, sweet, to the point. Clinical research associate, risk-based monitoring. You've got the SDV, SDR, ICH, GCP protocol compliance, ACRAC trained, seeking CRA 1 opportunities. About section, really focus on the keywords, again, from most job descriptions for the CRA positions. So trained in risk-based monitoring, SDV, SDR, protocol deviation management, inspection-ready monitoring, regulatory compliance. I support sponsor oversight with structured compliance-focused approach, grounded in ICH GCP principles and regulatory accountability. You can also add in the core monitoring competencies. Again, very much like your resume. So these keywords, the competencies, the skills that employers are looking for, training and certifications. There is a separate spot in your LinkedIn profile for you to add your certifications, so definitely add those in here. And then kind of your approach. So I approach monitoring as a sponsor delegated oversight that must withstand regulatory inspection, patient safety, data integrity, organizational liability, seeking CRA 1 or CRA training opportunities with organizations that prioritize quality, structured mentorship, and professional development. This here open to remote, hybrid, or field-based CRA positions with 50 to 75% travel available for immediate start. You can definitely put that in there. There is a portion of your profile where you can say you are open to work. Definitely use that. You can also add this in here. And then your experience or your work section, again, focus on the training, any projects, programs, previous positions, aligning those transferable skills that really show that you do have that experience. So when we're looking at profile optimization, include monitoring keywords in your headline and your about section. When recruiters go in and they type out keywords and profiles pop out, yours will definitely stand out. You want to be sure you're listing CRA competencies rather than just generic skills. Definitely use the recommendation section from previous CRA trainers, clinical research supervisors to give you a recommendation. This one is one that a lot of individuals miss. So it's really important that we talk about going out and finding clinical research groups within the LinkedIn platform or individuals that work at companies that you would like to work with. So connecting with recruiters and looking at the different types of clinical research groups that are out there and engage with them. Definitely another way to stand out on LinkedIn is sharing articles about RBM, inspection readiness, monitoring best practices. Again, you want to connect with the CRAs, CTMs, clinical operation professionals. So one tip here for the LinkedIn searchability and what recruiters are looking for is clinical research associate, CRA, risk-based monitoring, SDV, ICH GCP, site monitoring, clinical monitoring. You want to make sure that you're including these terms throughout your profile. All right, so when we're talking about outreach message templates, you want to be sure that you're being strategic when you're reaching out to CTMs, senior CRAs, and hiring managers. You want to make sure that your messages are brief, specific, and demonstrate readiness. So initial connection requests. So hello name, I'm pursuing clinical research associate role and completed structured CRA training focused on monitoring readiness, RBM principles, SDV, SDR, and inspection focused documentation. I noticed your experience in insert, their experience and would like the opportunity to connect and learn from your perspective on CRA development. Thank you for considering my request. Your name. Very straight to the point, basic, simple. Hey, this is me. I noticed your experience. I'd like to connect. And then follow up from an informal interview request. So hello name, thank you for connecting. I'm transitioning into clinical monitoring. Have completed the ACRAC training with focus on risk-based monitoring, regulatory documentation. I would value the opportunity to ask how your organization develops and evaluates junior CRAs. Would you be open to 15 to 20 minutes for a brief conversation in the next 2 weeks? Happy to work around your schedule. Thanks for considering. This is a great way to kind of put yourself out there and for a potential Employer connection, while it may not work at that time, you'll definitely be remembered by that individual as someone who kind of took that initial step and said, hey, this is me. I want to connect. Do you have time to talk about, what you're looking for? And kind of put yourself out there. So you want to personalize every message, keep it short, under 100 words. You want to ask specific questions rather than asking for generic advice. Respect their time by proposing 15 to 20-minute conversations. Follow up after 7 to 10 days if you haven't heard back. Send a thank you message after any type of conversation that you've had with them. And then one kind of best practice that I've always used, and I know a lot of individuals do, is track all outreach in a spreadsheet with dates and follow-up dates. This will really help you kind of stay on track and what you need to do as next steps. So when we're looking at what to avoid, generic copy-paste messages, lengthy paragraphs, asking for a job directly, requesting resume reviews from strangers, multiple follow-ups, informal language, sending messages late at night or on weekends. You really want to focus on building relationships by this type of outreach and making sure that they're, genuine connections. So here are 40 strategies for CRA placement. I know it's a lot of information, but like I have mentioned before, we will be doing individual webinars on different topics over the next few months, targeting search strategies, resume ATS optimization, LinkedIn professional outreach, internship internal conversations, and interview prep and advancement. All right, so final professional perspective. So CRAs are entrusted with sponsor oversight, regulatory defensibility, and patient protection. And this responsibility demands more than enthusiasm or generic clinical research knowledge. It requires a lot of judgment, discipline in your documentation, and accountability to be able to withstand that regulatory inspection. So judgment, so the ability to independently assess site risk, distinguish critical and non-critical findings, as well as escalating appropriately without creating unnecessary friction or sponsor alarm. We have escalation discipline, so the competency to identify issues requiring immediate escalation and documenting minor observations proportionately. Documentation quality, so the ability to write clear, objective, inspection-ready monitoring reports that link observations to specific risk categories and propose defensible corrective actions. And then reliability, so consistent execution of monitoring responsibilities with attention to detail, timely report submission, and thorough follow-up for closure. So for those aspiring CRAs who invest in formal training, develop risk-based thinking, monitoring documentation, and demonstrate regulatory accountability, really do position themselves for successful placement and rapid advancement. So the industry definitely values CRAs who understand that the monitoring is not merely site visits. It is sponsored, delegated oversight that must withstand the scrutiny of regulatory authorities, protect patients, and preserve data integrity. So definitely reach out to your CRA career team if you have any questions, but always keep in mind professionalism, strategic thinking, and regulatory discipline is the demand of what employers are looking for. Again, just a reminder, your success depends not on the enthusiasm alone, but the demonstrable monitoring readiness, documentation, and excellence, and commitment to a continuous improvement. So Whew, that was a lot of information. I thank you all for joining us today. We are at the hour, but definitely feel free to reach out at advising@ccrps.org if you have any questions. We'll be able to assist you with any questions that you have. But again, keep a lookout for the webinars that are more job related strategies coming up in the next few months. Thank you again all so much for being here. Have a wonderful day.